Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton Knave BBC Sessions, Deep Purple BBC Sessions. There's quite a few BBC recordings, but these are actual sessions, studio sessions, so they're sort of live-ish. I am talking about CD2, which is the Mark II stuff. I'm less interested in CD1. Those are generally on the remasters of the original albums anyway. And the sound quality isn't that good. It's the Mark II stuff which is really good. So yeah, as we know, Telegramation had unsurprisingly gone bust by the sounds of things. It was very wasteful with money, not very sensible. Meaning they had no distribution in the US, so they were financially in a very wobbly state. They had to tour. They had to tour Europe to get popular there and sort that out, because it was around the time of the third album, EMI, who were distributing them in Europe, decided to take them more seriously. This was that thing that they decided to concentrate on Hey Jude. Why would you do that? And set up the Harvest label. So I assume Barclay James Harvest were on it. But yeah, progressive heavy rock label for serious album stuff. So that was what was happening in 1969. So they did a lot of touring, and they did a lot of radio sessions for the BBC. Now these are fantastic. As with all these bands from this era, they've all got these fantastic BBC sessions that are recorded really well. Even King Crimson at a really early stage were on there. A little bit too early actually, but still. So this is. But the thing is with Deep Purple, within rock, in rock is like the extreme, everything's turned up full and everything's distorted. So because you've got the traditional men in white suits who wouldn't turn things up to 10, let alone 11, these are like the neutral versions of the songs. Like these are the album versions, and in rock is some wild live album. That's what it feels like. So that's why these are so important. And yet, this wasn't released until like 2001, something like that. This was the CD version, but we did have these on the box set. Listen, Learn, Read On, which is a great box set. If you look at the set list, if you look at the track list, it is really worth getting. You can also get the BBC sessions here, and it goes right the way from August 69, so right at the start of Mark II, to September 1970. So that's what the era we're going to be talking about. So obviously the next couple of albums we're going to review are within that time frame anyway. Right the way to the Gemini Suite in September 1970, which yes, I'm going to talk about. So yeah, there were loads of BBC things they did. So we've got the Studio 68 to 70, September 1970. There's a live performance that they got to do because of a cancellation, I think in January 1970, correct me on that date. Then in 72, famously, they played the Machine Head set. 74, live in London, probably the best Mark III performance. And then in 87, that was the last time. Not the last time, actually. They were allowed to film the encore, which of course didn't happen, and only Richie Blackmore and a roadie came out for the encore. So that was the 87, which I'm sure I'll talk about at some point. And then they played again in 2017, something like that, with Joe Wiley introducing Deep Purple. Yeah, that's a long time in the future. So you know, the first track is called Ricochet. As with the previous video, I talked about this. This is the very early version of Speaking. This is much earlier than the Kneel and Pray version, which is Nearly Speaking. This is just sounds like a stream of consciousness. It's not very melodic. So that's very, very interesting. I remember it was only written a month before this. So that's August 69. And they also played Bird Has Flown. I think Bird Has Flown is a really underrated Mark I track. Really suits Gillan's voice. This is better than the original. Controversial. But I think that's actually the best version of Bird Has Flown. I think it's almost moving towards in rock. That song. It's a transitional song. So they also played Child in Time, which is the tape that's lost. So that very early Child in Time doesn't exist. It would have been the earliest one. But yeah, so those 3 songs were broadcast, mixed in with a load of Mark 1 stuff. I don't know why. So yeah, the next show they did was in November '69. So we've now gone past the Kneel and Pray album. And of course, by the end of October, they had finished Speed, and this is Speed King, actual Speed King. This is the song as we know it, in an early form. There's not much going on in the middle, but it is Speed King. This is definitely, the finished article. Then we have Jam Stew, which people will know if they've got the extended version of In Rock. But with vocals, it was a song. It does appear that the In Rock session for it, they just didn't put the vocals on when they decided not to put it on the album. That tune, though, as an instrumental, was eventually used on Green Bullfrog. They also played Living Wreck, and that was lost as well, and that would have been the earliest Living Wreck. Never mind. So the next session, we jump all the way to April 1970, and surprisingly, here is a version of Hard Lovin' Man. How cool is that? I mean, it's only on the album, and then they didn't play it till 2011, 2010, something like that. They never played it in the 70s. This is it. They just did it on this studio session. It is weird how the set list didn't really change. I mean, you look at the Kneel and Pray Montreux 69 in October set list. That was the set list for till 71. The only thing that's changed on this set list is obviously Hush was replaced with Into the Fire, and they encored with Black Knight instead of Kentucky Woman. That's it. They didn't, and they got all these songs. They didn't play them, so that's why this is so valuable. Not as heavy as the album version, obviously. That's kind of the point. It's also kind of the point of the song, though, to be that heavy, maybe. But this must be near the same time that they recorded the album version. It came out in the summer of 1970. This is April. It sounds about right. Track 6 is Bloodsucker. I love this song. It's a great song. And again, obviously they didn't play it until 98. And it's a great version of that song. What can I say? Then we finally get a version of Living Wreck. Fortunately, they played it again. Barely ever played live. I think only on one tour in 2005, I think. Living Wreck is an interesting one because obviously the thing about making all the songs, what was it? If it's not fast and exciting, it doesn't belong on this album, was the mantra of In Rock. And I think this breaks that because you've got Cry Free, which isn't as good as Living Wreck, but he's fast and exciting, whereas Living Wreck is a bit slower and a bit groovier, has a groove to it. So that's interesting that they decided to go with the better song and not the faster song. Works on the album though. Track 8, we're on to September 1970 now, so they're now famous. In Rock has been a huge hit. Black Knight is in the charts, and there's an interview with John Lord. It says Brian Matthew is interviewing John Lord. I'm sure it's Brian Matthews. And he talks about that. He talks about having a single in the charts and all that. It got to number 2. Then we have Black Knight. This is obviously the early version of Black Knight where it sounded like the album version. It's not some sort of encore, so it's not quite as energetic. But it's a nice version of Black Knight. Then we've got Grabsplatter, which is an instrumental. That's not in the In Rock sessions, or it didn't fit on the album anyway. And that ended up mostly as I'm Alone, B-side to Strange Kind of Woman, which I think I've always liked I'm Alone, but also Slow Train, which was another song that was lost for years until they did the big release of Fireball. So that's worth a listen as well. Slow Train is also good. Then we have Into the Fire, which is another great song, isn't it? It's Purple at their most dirgy though. They were never quite that dirty again as Into the Fire. It's quite extreme. And finally, we get a version of Child in Time, although it's September 1970, so by then, this is when they were playing it for 20 minutes. This is an abridged version to get it back down to 10 minutes. this is actually a perfect version of Child in Time, I think. Gillan's perfect on it. You could argue the only thing is the guitar solo is very short, so he plays fantastically, but it's very, very short. It just kind of stops, and then the organ comes in. So whether he broke a string or something, it's not really clear. I remember live by September, there was actually trade-off sections with guitar bits and organ bits. It does sound like Lord is doing the motif to go back into the guitar solo, but that never happens, and it's just the motif to go back into the song. But apart from that, it's a really, really good version of Child in Time, so it's definitely worth a listen. So yeah, those songs are all worth getting. You've got Bird Has Flown, you've got all the in-rock stuff, you've got Grabsplatter and Jam Stew as well. So definitely worth getting for that disc too. Or get that big box set. Listen, Learn, Read On, which is definitely worth getting. See you next time.